Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Glad to have you here with us, joining us for episode 75 of the pod. We are three-quarters of the way to the century mark, Joey.
Wow.
Pretty hard to believe. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. First of all, we got some Bad Batch episodes 10 and 11 from the third and final season to discuss today. But before we get into all of that exciting conversation, I want to remind you that if you're not yet subscribed to the Hoth Hangout podcast on YouTube, check us out there for the video version of every Hoth Hangout podcast available every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Additionally, you can check out our reactions to every single Star Wars show, including our current reactions to the Bad Batch Season 3, of course, that we'll be discussing today. You can also contact us with your Star Wars questions or thoughts via email. Hothhangout@gmail.com is where you're able to reach us there. Shoot us a message or a question. We'd love to showcase it here on the pod and discuss it, of course. Additionally, the Hoth Hangout podcast is available wherever you get your pods, including Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review. We would appreciate it very much. And it does also allow the podcast to be more easily discovered by other folks as well. You can find us on the socials, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or X, at Hoth Hangout on each of those platforms is where you can find us. And additionally, the Discord server for Hoth Hangout is available down in the show notes of today's episode as well. Check out the link in the description to join a community of folks who all love Star Wars and a community hub, if you will, where we can all like-mindedly hang out in our Star Wars thoughts and discussions. So definitely check out the Hoth Hangout Discord server, as that is a growing community over there. The teaser question for today that we'll touch on towards the end of the episode, based, of course, on episodes 10 and 11 of season 3 of The Bad Batch, is simply, will Omega survive Mount Tantus? Or maybe
Ooh.
even more largely, season 3 of The Bad
Oh
Batch.
my.
So,
What a
yeah.
dark question. Who came up with that one?
Yeah. I will take full blame for coming up with this week's question of the week.
mine
Uh,
always mine are always so light. He came in hot with that one.
I think I literally texted you. I was like, "What if we went really dark instead?" But Joey, what's going on, man? How are you?
Pretty good. I'm still I don't know how we didn't know that this was two episodes this week. We both kind
Yeah.
of missed the mark here. I don't know why. I went back and looked at some of our notes. Particularly, like, so we have a document where basically it shows every week what we're going to be talking about, and I didn't even notice that the finale was a week long, a week past of what it should have been in those notes. And I'm like, I should have seen it then. Normally I'm the one that creates those notes. So, but either way, we got surprised with the two episode night. Especially at 2 in the morning. It's a nice little surprise that we were going to be up a little bit later.
Yeah, we both hopped on and I pulled up Disney Plus at like 2:01 or something. I was like, "Wait, why are there 2 episodes available?" Because
Hmm.
like you said, we definitely thought we were you and I totally overlooked the fact that I guess we're getting 2 episodes yesterday. So we're going to be talking about both episodes 10 and 11 in today's podcast.
Under an hour.
Uh, Under an hour. It's going to happen at Gibbo. By the way, as a quick side note, Gibbo hasn't been on for a couple episodes. I guess I just wanted to give a quick 20-second update. He's doing good, just super busy with life things. So, hoping Gibbo will potentially be back in the next week or two for
Hmm.
either episode 76 or
Hmm.
77 of the podcast, hopefully. So, we send our best to Gibbo. He's doing well, just like I said, busy
Yes.
with general life busyness, as does happen to
Yes.
all
And
of us.
he has still been helping. He's been sending some assets our
This is
way.
true.
He did do the edit for one of the videos for the
Hmm.
reaction videos. And so, yeah, he is still very much helping out and working with us. Hopefully he isn't like, you know what, I'm done with those guys. We're just gonna leave them. So please don't leave us, Gibbo.
Come back, Gibbo. I miss you. But yeah, like you said, Gibbo's definitely been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes with the episodes, even if he's not able to be on the actual episodes, like you said, with the reaction edit and whatnot, and a lot of other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So we'll look forward to seeing Gibbo back, hopefully on either episode 76 or 77 Hoth Hangout podcast. We don't have a ton of news to talk about this week. Really, the main piece of news that we wanted to cover is actually about a book that I think we touched on. Gosh, it's probably been at least 2 or 3 months ago on a podcast, where we kind of talked about the fact that this was coming out and what it'll be about. This book, Star Wars: The Living Force, will take place prior to the events of the Phantom Menace, so before Episode One, and it centers very largely around the members of the Jedi Council at that time. And so recently, I want to say within the past couple days, I guess I could just look real quick right here. I guess it came out back on February 26th, but it's important because the book itself is releasing 6 days from now. There is an excerpt from the book made available, an exclusive excerpt over on StarWars.com. And so you and I kind of just breezed over that and kind of got a quick glance and a feel for what that book is going to contain or what aspects of that book might contain. And it's kind of the excerpt. I don't know. We were talking about it real briefly before we started recording. It's this scene where Qui Gon is in it at the beginning. He walks in, like, kind of says something that makes the council a little bit disgruntled, and then leaves. And of course, Mace Windu is the one to be like, you know, like I don't stand for what Qui Gon thinks. He's the first one to kind of speak up about his disagreement with Qui Gon. I guess I'll put it that way. So
Right.
it is cool, this excerpt in this novel. I think because you get to see a lot of the characters that we're familiar with from not just the prequels, but really Clone Wars, because that's where a lot of the character building and the depth with these characters happened was in the animated Clone Wars show. Like I know you love Deepa Balaba. She's in this scene in the book.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, and so we get to, experience a lot of characters from another angle, another lens that we've known and loved already. So, like I said, this book comes out in 6 days on April 9th. This is something I'm probably going to try to pick up and hopefully read sometime this month. What are you feeling in regards to the book? You going to pick it up as well?
Definitely will pick it up, and it will definitely be in my stack of Star Wars books that I still need to read. I think the my priority at this moment would be the High Republic books
Yeah,
with the upcoming show, The Acolyte, coming out in a couple of months, actually, right?
yeah.
So,
Officially less than 2 months as of
right, yeah.
today.
So I think that those will trump the priority. I think that those High Republic books will be there. But like I said, I probably will pick up this book. As far as the excerpt, I mean, wasn't too I was a little confused of what actually was even going on. It seems like it did seem. I mean, the title of this particular article was "The Jedi Council Debates Its Future in Star Wars," so that's exactly what we got. Is just a bunch of Jedi's, trying to figure out what to do with what Qui Gon had said,
Yeah,
and just kind of a long-winded way to say, okay, let's go do it, whatever. So I think that, but to have all of those Jedi there involved, this Jedi Council, just cool to see them interacting. We just didn't get to see a lot of that in the movies, so to be able to see, I guess we did see a little bit, but we didn't see like specific, like you said, Deepa Balaba getting some information in there, some input into the conversation, and some of the other ones, Yariel and Yaddle as well. So I think
yeah.
it was kind of cool just seeing that. Of course, unfortunately, it's in the book form, so we can't fully see it per se. But that's the great thing about books. Your imagination can kind of take you away with how you feel like the scene went. So yeah, it was definitely something I want to read. John Jackson Miller is also the one that wrote, I believe it was A New Dawn, the one with
Kanan.
Kanan and Hera. So definitely a good author for Star Wars. We'll be excited to read this, but like I said, I probably will be on the back burner for a bit with the immediate urgency for all High Republic content.
I just looked up his name and I realized I have read a Star Wars book by him. I haven't read New Dawn. I want to, but I think I might actually have it on the shelf back. I do actually. I don't know. For those of you watching the video version of the podcast, you can see got some of my collection of Star Wars books back there. Lost Tribe of the Sith is one that he wrote as
Oh,
well. I don't know if you've ever read those collected stories, but they're pretty good. I like them. So I guess I am familiar with his some of
right.
his Star Wars writing, I guess, and I enjoyed that book a lot. And similar to you, Joey, I every time I feel like I'm making progress into my stack of Star Wars books that I need to read, I end up picking up another one or two, and I think I'm like 8 right now that I still
Yeah,
need to
that
read, and,
sounds about
like,
right.
I've
Do you
been
have
able to.
a do you have half price bookstores by you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
that is a treasure trove of Star
It
Wars
is.
books.
Joey, I don't know if I told you this. A couple months ago, I went into Half Price Books. I got, like, you know how with those the original Star Wars, they made them into, like, novel adaptations?
Yes.
I found, New Hope and Return of the Jedi,
No way.
the novel versions for, like, $3 a piece.
Isn't that crazy? You
Yeah,
just gotta pick that up just to even have.
yeah, yeah, it's, like, sitting in a bookstore, someone donated it probably 10 or
Right.
15 years ago. I'm like, "Well, I can't not pay $3 for this thing."
Nice.
So, yeah, yeah, ever-growing collections of Star Wars books, and might have to add another one to it later next week. We'll, be on the lookout. Maybe we'll do an episode on this at some point. Maybe tie some of our thoughts in on the book, perhaps after the end of the Bad Batch. But be on the lookout. Hits stores near you. Check it out. Maybe at half price books, even. Maybe they'll have it available there. Who knows?
Not sponsored, by
Wait,
the way.
yeah, not a sponsor, but if half price books, if you happen to randomly be listening to this podcast. We did have one comment we wanted to showcase this week. It was in regards to last week's episode where we talked a lot about Asajj Ventress, Kid Caduceus. Oh, you know what's funny? We were reading this comment right before we recorded today because we were going through our show notes and everything we're going to talk about, and we're looking at Kid Caduceus's comment, and at the end, the commenter says, "Perfect pronunciation, Ben." And you and I were like, I don't know what that was in reference to, but just now, me like trying to pronounce your name, Kid Caduceus, I realized that your comment is in reference to me trying to pronounce your name in last week's podcast.
Here we go.
So
Nice.
I
Nailed
got
it.
it right. Let's go.
You see the light
Um,
bulb above his head. That was amazing.
yeah. But Kid Caduceus also said I'd cast Sophia Botella. That pronunciation may not be right, but Sophia Botella is known for being in Kingsman and Rebel Moon. And again, think Kid Caduceus thinks that she would be a great live action Asajj. By the way, did you ever see Rebel Moon? I
I
didn't
did.
actually.
You did
How
not?
was it?
Okay. I mean, it
I
was
saw it got
fine.
very mediocre
Yeah, it
reviews.
was that's pretty accurate. It was mediocre. I think th- th- it kind of left I will watch the second one because I am kind of interested in how it'll turn out, but it kind of felt like drawn out a little bit, and it felt very, and but at the same time very rushed. They put this like
Hmm.
crew together just kind of out of nowhere, like out of different planets of the universe. I'm like, how do you know these people that just all get together and just randomly pick? So if don't want to spoil too much if you end up watching it, but just the pacing of it was a little bit disorienting for me
Huh.
anyway. But for as far as the effects and the action and all that, I really did enjoy watching it for those things, and also really tried not to make it like a Star Wars. Like, what would it look like in Star Wars? It was very hard because for those who don't know the story behind this, this was a movie that Zack Snyder actually had pitched to Disney, um, and was eventually denied because of its particular content being a little bit too R-rated. So, it seemed like, I mean, it didn't seem like it was too terrible as far as like content, but but like I said, the effects were really good, and the fight scenes were really good, but just the storyline was lacking a little bit.
Hmm. Maybe I'll catch it when it comes to a streaming platform.
Well, it's on
Possibly.
Netflix.
Is it currently on
It's
Netflix?
well, that's how they released
Oh,
them. It
it was a
wasn't.
direct to Netflix,
It was
wasn't it?
direct to Netflix. Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. So
okay.
it's on Netflix right now. I think the next one, I forget if it's coming out in June or in the next couple of months at least. The
Of
second
this
part of it.
year?
Oh yeah, second
Oh,
part
they
of it's
must have
coming.
they must have made them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to give it a watch, and maybe we can do a part one and part two review sometime. Maybe between the events of Bad Batch and Acolyte or something like that. But yeah, Sophia Botella, potentially a good live action Asajj. You never know. Hopefully, we do get to see live action Asajj someday. That is the hope. In last week's episode, we also asked the question of the week was, will Omega use a force power this season? Those that don't know, you can always vote in these polls either here on YouTube in the community tab or over on X. formerly known as Twitter, in the posted polls over there. Folks on the YouTube vote said 70% no, she will not be using her any force powers this season. Folks over on Twitter almost identically agreed with 67 almost percent saying no, with 33% saying yes. Looks like we've got more folks thinking no than yes. I probably lean in that direction too.
Hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen with Omega, but it kind of leads you to question, and maybe we can talk about this in today's podcast. But like, if she has a high M count, can you have a high midi chlorian count and not be and not be force sensitive? Like, we've always just associated those two things as
Right.
being one and the same. But can you have a high M count and not be force sensitive? Is that a thing?
That's a great question. It reminds me of, remember in Harry Potter when he didn't realize like he was a magician or that he was a wizard,
Yeah,
and he was able to do these things and not like realize it, like make the glass disappear at the zoo, with
yeah,
the
yeah,
snake coming out
yeah.
and all that stuff. So I wonder if that's something that we could see here. I almost thought it was going to happen in one of the episodes
At the end
with,
of the episode,
yeah,
right?
well, actually no, well, there absolutely, but also with the specimens in the first episode as
Mm,
well. So I was wondering if we were going to see any of that, but I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And again, be on the lookout this week to answer our question of the week. Also regarding Omega, the poll for this week's episode will be available on the YouTube community tab and on X, as was last week's. And shout out to everyone, and thank you for those that voted. We appreciate you guys. Well, we've got, like we said, two episodes to discuss today, episodes 10 and 11. I guess to start us off, we were gonna maybe touch on the fact that there was two episodes. Um, of course, episode 10 not containing anything directly related to the Bad Batch, meaning that they weren't in the episode. Um, Probably the reason being why we were given two in 1 week. Because I think as viewers of a show, when you don't get the main characters for an entire week of viewing, you're like, oh, okay. I mean,
Right.
that felt like not pertaining to the main characters and to the main part of the story. Um, and you and I think discussed this a little bit right after our reaction. I thought this very well could have stood alone. Episode 10,
Hmm.
that I mean, could have stood alone as being an episode without episode 11 in the same week. Understand why they made the choice to do that, because the Bad Batch are in the majority of episode 11, and not to leave us without them for an entire week. But um, personally, upon our initial reactions to both episodes, you and I think, liked episode 10 slightly more. What did you think, kind of in regards to just the fact that there were two episodes in the same week?
Yeah, same as what you said. There, to not have Omega and Wrecker and Hunter and Crosshair not be in an episode would just kind of feel weird. It reminded me, was that in Mandalorian when there was that whole episode on Dr. Pershing? Is that right? When
Yes,
Yeah,
I think.
when there was like he did like a TED Talks. Remember that? He just-
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was like a whole episode. Was that Mandalorian or without? I think it had to be, right.
I
It had to be Mandalorian.
Was it Mando, or was it Boba Fett? I don't remember,
I think it was
honestly.
Mando. But either way, there was that whole episode not dealing with the main characters of the story or of the series. So it would make sense that you would have these two lumped together. But as you said, episode 10 was pretty good. The intrigue from what, where it ended off with, especially with Dr. Emery Carr. I think that was more compelling. Honestly, maybe between the two of them was pretty equal as far as the end of episode 10 and 11. So as much as maybe the choice was to lump these two together because there was no Bad Batch in the 10th episode, I think it really could stand alone, and it ended up being a more enjoyable episode for me on episode 10.
Yeah, yeah, and I was in the same boat in that regard. Not that episode 11 wasn't
No.
good, because you and I
Yeah.
both really liked episode 11. There was definitely more action in episode 11. Episode 10 just really fleshed out the character development of Emery, which is going to be super essential for the end of this show. So All that to say, I will personally take an episode that has really good character development over an episode that has really good action in it. But to each their own. If you liked episode 11 more, I couldn't fault you. I again, we both loved episode 11. But I guess let us know down in the comments of if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening over on one of the social media platforms. Let us know which of these two episodes you enjoyed more personally. Um, with episode 10, it kind of started off when we got this introduction into what we think is a new species of character in Star Wars. This mother-daughter duo, Ailish and Bairn. Man, I'm doing lots of name pronunciations in today's episode. Um, with the force sensitive daughter Bairn. Bairn. Are we going with Bairn or we'll go with Bairn as the
Baron, let's go with
pronunciation?
Baron. Yeah.
Um, and so, of course, that sort of ties into this overarching plot line of the episode as these children are being collected by the Empire for Project Necromancer, otherwise known as Project Somehow. Palpatine has returned. Um, oh, and before I forget, I don't want to leave it out, and this is totally out of order and not related to the episode. And I wanted to mention it in the intro, and I meant to mention it last week, and I forgot. So I'm going to do it real quick in the next 20 seconds. Check out this cool hat I got recently.
Okay.
It's a hand knitted beanie with stormtroopers on
Stormtroopers,
it,
that's really cool. Yeah.
and there's little Tie fighters under it.
Oh, is that what that is on the bottom? Nice.
Yeah, yeah. My I meant to showcase it last week and I forgot, and I almost forgot to do it again this week. My girlfriend's mother made it for my birthday.
What?
So it's literally a one of a kind hat.
That is crazy.
Anyways, yeah, side note, just wanted to throw that in there before I forgot
Nice.
again this week.
Right. I'll give you my hat size later.
Okay, okay, I got you.
Birthday's in November. Okay.
Okay, I got you. I got you. Okay, sorry for the side note. Just wanted to make sure I remembered to mention that. But so yeah, where were we? Project Necromancer. Project Somehow Palpatine has returned. Um, Nala Se formerly was heavily involved with this. Emery is promoted to her old position and given sort of this free range over the vault, as it's known in the episode. And the vault contains these children, but the Empire, mainly Dr. Hemlock, the person in the episode who's doing this, refers to them as specimens.
Mm.
And I think you and I both, when we were watching, we were like, "Ooh, that's like very, very dark and dehumanizing." Like, here's these
Right.
like 8-year-old kids who are like, "This is specimen 32 and specimen 54," and
Right.
even the kids, especially Jax, the one who tries to break out, is like, "That's not my name. I have a name," you know. And even Eva, I think that's her name, is a little bit like that too. So, um, and then you and I both searched and searched, and if anyone out there knows, we could not find the name of the third child in this episode that was in the vault that Emery was taking care of. But they are a Pantoran, we think, which, if you've been watching the Bad Batch, is the same species as Senator Chuchi. Um, but anyways, so there's these three specimens. Emery kind of develops amongst the three of them. We get to see her develop the most connection with Eva, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the synopsis of episode 10. But just really dehumanizing, I thought, in a way of
Mhm.
referring to kids as specimens. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean that was a little off-putting to be honest when you hear it, and it made me cringe a little bit. I'm gonna be honest. Like I get this is the Empire, but it's children. It is an animated series, so there's
Right.
part of me that's just like, ooh, this is a little too dark, a little too much, and in Hemlock's voice too. It's really just
Yeah.
talking like this. And what
What's
was the
his
quote
name?
you said?
Jimmy Simpson. Isn't that who plays
Mm,
Hemlock?
is that right? Yeah. And he's like,
Yeah.
they are scientific assets, nothing more. Just
Right.
just
Right.
so terrible just to hear it. And Eva is like so sweet, and you could see that. You could even see early on that Jax is going to be the one that's going to try to break out. He's kind of looking at the data pad. He's looking at his way out. So you kind of knew that was coming eventually. But
Mhm.
yeah, to and I think that speaks a lot to what the Empire thinks of, assets. like what they count as assets, whether it's these children, their specimens, or the clones, or whoever. They end up just dehumanizing. You kind of mentioned it in the notes here. That's exactly what they do, and Hemlock even gives Emery the order: do not, develop any type of relationship with these specimens. They
Hmm.
are like they are scientific assets.
Which
So
she really disobeys at the end of the episode.
right, yeah, and that's why this episode is one of my favorite of the two here.
Yeah, yeah. The probably part of the episode that might be underrated. I don't know if it's underrated. It doesn't really play into the plot of the episode per se, more than just kind of being a little bit of fan service. Is that the creature that we mentioned at the beginning? This new species, this force sensitive girl, Bairn, is captured by none other than Cad Bane.
Yes.
Uh, Walks in with what's Toto? I think
Mhm.
is the name of his robot or droid, whatever, and captures the infant and delivers her to the Empire. Uh, I don't know if like there's a reason they chose Cad Bane other than just being
No.
like, here's some Cad Bane, enjoy.
Yeah,
This is the
yeah,
bounty hunter who's,
yeah.
I mean, he's good at what he does,
The
but
class one bounty hunter.
yeah, yeah. So this is 3 episodes in a row where we got a bounty hunter. We had Fennec Shan in episode 8. We had Asajj in episode 9, and now Cad Bane in episode 10. So kind of a cool trend they've got going there. I want to see all of 3 of them in the same episode
Hmm.
at the end of the season. I'm hopeful that that's going to happen and that we don't just get to not see any of the 3 of them again in the rest of the show. We've talked about that a little bit in previous weeks, so I won't go too much into that. But I hope we get to see at least one, if not all 3 of them
Would
again.
Would you like a bounty hunter show?
Yes. In fact, wasn't that George Lucas's original? I feel like I've read before that George Lucas had an idea for one of his next projects before he sold to Disney was to do a story about like the criminal underworld on
Oh, that's
Coruscant
right.
and make
Wasn't
it
there
like
some wasn't there some like pilot footage or some very early footage of or concepts? Because I remember it
maybe.
being like very Coruscant looking, lower level Coruscant type of vibe, if I remember correctly. But I definitely do remember something like that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of his concepts and ideas ended up getting incorporated into Clone Wars anyways.
Mm.
Um and but anyway, yeah, so bounty hunters are running amok at this point in the galaxy and I'm not mad about it. It's pretty cool to get to see them in the show. So even if they don't make a whole lot of you know, they don't drive the
Right.
plot really. I mean, they're there to help steer the plot, but they don't really
Yeah.
mean a lot to the plot, it seems.
They're
Um,
utilities.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I guess to kind of backtrack or I guess fast forward to where we were just a second ago back on Tantus, like you mentioned, Jax had that failed escape attempt. And this is, I think, a really important scene in the episode because it's the beginning of the development of Emery to sort of understanding or realizing that what they're doing to these kids is not good,
Right.
not right, even. When the clone commander stuns Jax with the gun and she's like, "He's just a kid. Your actions were too extreme." And the commander's response, very Empire, of course, is that the specimen attempted to escape. I was just following protocol.
Right.
The classic clone trooper, stormtrooper response. Hey, I'm just following protocol.
Follow
Oh,
orders. Good
yeah,
soldiers follow orders.
good soldiers follow orders. So uh, this scene and kind of this growing sense of uneasiness prompts Emery to go visit Nala Se in her prison cell. And they both agree that the children, of course, don't belong there and that Nala Se was just acting the way she did to protect Omega. And really, if she probably could have done that for the other kids, she would have, but understands that she did what she could for them to the best that she could. And then they kind of have an interesting note in the conversation at the end of it. Uh, right after Nala Se says, "Now they'll look to you. What will you do?" Emery says, "There's nothing I can do. I don't have that kind of power." And then Nala says something that got you and I kind of going, "Oh, what does she mean by that?" She says, "Don't you?" in response to Emery saying, "I don't have that kind of power."
Hmm.
So we know Emery is the genetic sibling of Omega. We know Omega has a high M count. We're not sure if that means she's force sensitive or not. But this gives me hinting vibes that Emery has high M count too, if not also force sensitive. That's somewhat unlikely, you could argue, but that's what I got from this. Did you feel that way?
So for those on the video version of the podcast, I've got two things here: 2 + 2, putting them together. I would like this. I would like to think that that's what I think. You and I had that same thought, like, oh, this is not what I expected at all, but it makes sense. Like you said, the sister of Omega, and just the way they time that, I don't have that kind of power, don't you? And then of course we're, as the viewer, that's where our mind's going to go. So
Mhm.
um if she's going to use it in any way, it doesn't, doesn't even actually matter. It's just the fact that it's out there now. So yeah, I'm excited to see. So I mean, just in, because that's probably within the first, I don't know, 10 minutes of the episode, 10-12 minutes of the episode, that we've got all of this stuff from Emery, just like one on top of another. So
Mhm.
it was just so compelling, and you just wanted more and more of it, and I think it ended up even getting better.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Also, side note about Nala Se, does she remind you? Have you ever seen Zootopia? You know,
Yes,
you know the
the
you know the
sloth.
sloth
Yeah,
at the
the sloth.
bank. It was like, "Hi, how can I help you?" Like when I'm listening to Nala Se talk, I'm like, "Just spit it out. I know you're Kaminoan, but."
Yeah, right. Yeah, good
Anyways,
call.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
call back.
um, so Emery hears of this new specimen that we touched on earlier in the episode, and that we got to see towards the beginning of episode 10, who was captured by Cad Bane. So Emery says she's going to go with this clone commander, who the same one I believe who stunned Jax earlier in the episode, to collect the new specimen, the new child. And at that same time, shortly thereafter, Hemlock, we get to see him talk to, at the time, Governor Tarkin in this episode, who eventually we know becomes Grand Moff, about the additional funds needed for the project. And Tarkin is like, "This is getting too costly. You need to cool it, Hemlock. You're wasting all the money." Hemlock is trying to assure him this is all going to be worth it. And there is this kind of unestablished sense of hierarchy in this scene that Hemlock somehow has the ability to, like, I think he reports to Tarkin, but
Right.
in some capacity he keeps secrets that Tarkin does not
Hmm.
have the access or ability to have as well,
Hmm.
meaning Project Necromancer.
Right.
Which I guess makes sense if you're the emperor. Like, you're probably going to try to tell as few people as possible and limit the confidentiality of this secret project of yours
Hmm.
to just the people who need to know, away from Tarkin, I guess.
Right. For those who are in the corporate world like me, this is very much like a budget discussion. Just like, what do we have in the budget? Can we make this work? And then there's always the one guy that's like, well, rich up top. He really wanted to get this done, so we got to get it done. And then so the project manager's like, we can't get this done. So this totally reminded me of I had a little PTSD watching this scene. I'm like, oh my god, I think I've been in this meeting. So,
Yeah,
um, but yeah, so just to see it play out in Star Wars was actually a little funny for me.
yeah, yeah. It was very much so resembling that budgeting style meeting, like you said. Hemlock then has another conversation with the operative, which is essentially just go find Omega. We need you to find Omega. And then fast forward to Emery meeting Cad Bane, dropping off the child, the new specimen, at the base of his ship to the clone commander. Um, this scene, I I was kind of hoping for more from Cad Bane, but it was just
Yeah,
like he showed up,
got
took the credits, and left, and I was
left.
like,
Yeah,
oh, maybe he was just in the episode for fan service.
it's hard not to think that. It really is.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, at this point, they're probably just trying to get as many of the favorite bounty hunters into the season as they possibly
See,
could.
and
But
I wonder, here I want to hear your thoughts on this. Cad Bane, Asajj Ventress, really big names in Clone Wars, Star Wars, right?
Mhm.
Do you think at all they were a little concerned about season 3 of the Bad Batch? That they had to, they feel like they had to, they couldn't, pull their punches. They needed to throw in a couple of big names in there just to make sure they had people watching it.
Maybe. I mean, yes and no. Okay, with Cad Bane, I think it's literally just like we need something familiar in this episode other than Emery. Maybe the showrunners didn't feel confident enough that a secondary character up to this point in the show could stand alone as the primary character in this episode's plot. I mean, I think she could, but clearly they're like, let's throw Cad Bane in there. That'll help the cause a
Right.
little bit. Asajj, I guess, was different because we didn't know. As far as I'm aware, I don't think we knew Cad Bane was going to be in this episode or this season. Whereas Asajj was like highly advertised in the marketing and in the
True.
trailer. But yeah, I don't know. There's something to be said for like including the things that people love from the past, but that comes at a cost of are they doing it to like as fan service just to like make those people enjoy it or like it more? I don't know. I like to think that they're not. I lean towards not,
Right. Yeah.
but there's definitely elements of that, especially in this episode with Cad Bane.
Yeah. I think I reserve my call on that until the end of the season to see if
Yeah, that's a good point.
if Cad Bane doesn't show up anymore. I'm going to say, yep, that wasn't at all needed.
Right.
I would,
And Asajj.
Asajj, yeah, as well. But I mean, at least Asajj had some purpose, teaching a little bit about the
Sure.
Force and things like that. So, it could have been literally anyone else, sure, but they leaned on Asajj for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Fan service or not, I always do like to see these Clone Wars era characters. But so the new child is brought back to the vault, and Jax we see is put into solitary confinement because of his escape attempts. For 2 whole rotations, that's Star Wars terminology for. I should know how long a rotation is, and I don't. If I had to guess, it feels like I've read that or heard that as like 2 weeks,
Hmm.
but I might totally be making that up. So, someone who's very well versed in Star Wars
Time.
timelines, yeah, let us know how long a rotation is. I guess we could just look it up, but yeah, let us know in the comments. Um, and this is kind of after Jax is put into essentially what is solitary confinement. Um, Emery kind of forms this bond at the end of the episode with Eva, um, and does so by giving her the doll that Omega made originally back at the beginning of this season that we find out Emery has been keeping. And that's just a gesture I think on Emery's part to say you're not alone in this. Like I'm here,
Hmm.
even though I can't really show that I am. I'm going to do that in a way that I best can at this moment in time. Because in some way, Emery does care about these kids.
Right.
Um, so I loved the end of the episode. I thought it was a really great gesture.
Yeah, I think that just I think when we first saw Emery, was it the end of last season? Was that the first time we had really seen her?
Yeah, I believe so.
You kind of knew that there was something special about her. When we discovered that she was Omega's, essentially sister, also a clone. I think that's what made her so intriguing early on. And now, although I'll be honest, I kind of forgot her a little bit because she was kind of showing signs of just kind of just following orders. I got to do these tests. We got to do all of this, and we're here on Tantus. We have all this protocol. So she kind of gave me those vibes early on. But this episode, obviously, she completely changed it. We actually saw the change the moment she changed to decide this is too much. This is not right. These are
Mm.
just children. So to finally see that change, and to end the episode with the ending of the episode was with the doll was just like brilliant. I'm like, okay, well, this is like she is done. This is her symbol of saying I am going to be going against the Empire. Just you wait.
Yeah, yeah, kind of bringing us full. No, I guess no pun intended. Full rotation back to the end of episode.
Two full
I guess
rotation.
what it 2 full rotations. back to the end of episode 3, I think, of this season, where Omega and Crosshair left Tantus, or maybe it was in episode 4, but toward the beginning of the season where she left this doll behind. And now, ironically, Omega, we find out in episode 11, is going to be coming back to Tantus, it seems. So maybe even in some small way, you could argue that like Emery giving the doll to Eva is like a little bit of foreshadowing that
Oh
Omega
yeah.
is going to be back and stronger because she doesn't need the doll. I don't know. I'm kind of reaching for some symbolism and meaning in that, but you could perhaps say that. So great end to episode 10, I thought. And again, you and I both uh, really enjoyed this episode and slightly more than episode 11. Which at this point, I guess we could go ahead and get into episode 11. Again, very different from episode 10. Episode 10 was very story driven, a lot about Project Necromancer, a lot about M Count, of course, very focused on Emery and her character development. Episode 11 was much more so about the Bad Batch, the operative, the pursuit of Omega on Pabu. And so the way that this episode opens up is the operative is sort of chasing information as to the whereabouts of Omega and the Bad Batch, and does this by following Fee, our good old friend Fee, and steals flight data from her ship, and then finds out that the coordinates of excuse me, the location of where they've been hiding, which we know is the planet Pabu, and then makes his way there after relaying that information to the clone commander, and then there is a really sweet scene before any of the action in the episode starts, right after that, where Omega is talking to her good friend, the son of gosh, his name is escaping me. I can see him. Um,
It's the mayor
oh
of Pabu, right?
yeah, he's the mayor of Pabu, but it's his daughter who is the one who Omega is good friends with and talking with, and they're having this conversation about you know the- leaving things behind and whatnot, and he says, "Are you sure you want to leave this?" And we then it pans to it, and you see Omega is holding text glasses, and it's
Mm.
like, oh, or goggles, I guess.
It's Shep, by the
Um,
way. The name is Shep.
Shep, Mayor Shep. You happen to know his daughter's name off the old Google search?
Not quite yet,
That's
but
the
keep going.
that's the one who Omega is talking to, and so just a really sweet sentimental scene, and again, are we getting some hints of foreshadowing that the operative is like a mind warped, mind brainwashed tech? I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but who knows? We'll find out, I guess, in a future episode soon to be.
Daughter name is Liana.
Liana. Okay, yeah, that does sound very familiar now that you say that. So, anyways, that's who Omega is talking to in this scene, and so shortly thereafter, we see that the operative has managed to track down the Bad Batch on Pabu. He's kind of like climbing on the roof of the building and looking through his sniper scope, and is able to identify Omega through those special lenses or goggles that he's using, or binoculars, if you will. And so um, there, the scene right after that, he's aiming through his sniper at the Bad Batch's ship, where Wrecker is down there, kind of working on stuff, prepping the ship. And initially, when he shoots stuff at the ship, I thought he was shooting a tracking device.
Right.
And then you hear this beeping, and then to see this massive explosion, and we were both like, "Oh, dang!" To the point where we're like, "Is Wrecker okay?" And there was a
I
half.
was a little worried. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a half a second in this episode where there was some real concern on your face that Wrecker might be gone.
Like oh no, don't do this to Wrecker.
Yeah, yeah. But we learn he's just unconscious. AZ is able to help him a little bit later on in the episode, and so um, but the operative did blow up the ship that Wrecker was loading. Wrecker is knocked unconscious. The Imperial forces then land on Pabu and begin destroying any escape ships and transports. It was cool, by the way. We mentioned this during the reaction. That the way that the Imperial forces land on Pabu are actually in those prequel style gunships.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's a cool like tie-in there, or a
It was,
callback,
yeah.
I guess, if you will. Um, and then right after that, Hunter then tries to steal a gunship because they know that they're not going to be able to get off the planet unless they somehow manage to commandeer an Imperial ship. But the operative in this scene, Omega and Crosshair are looking on as he's attempting to steal the gunship, knocking clone troopers
Hmm.
left and right off the gunship and they're going flying.
Do you remember this
And
conversation between them where
yes,
uh,
a little bit of
Omega's like,
sarcasm.
yeah, Omega is like, is that Hunter? And then Crosshair's like, uh,
Uh-huh.
uh-huh. What a good Hunter. I mean, Crosshair's been becoming the comic relief somehow in this series.
Yeah. The very dry humor comic relief. Yes. He but I mean, I guess we can talk about this now. Crosshair has now become um kind of who we hoped he would always have been if he hadn't of, you know, turned to being someone who has to follow orders no matter what and being loyal to the empire no matter what. So much to the point that like Omega is now telling him like keep the greater mission in mind. Like you
Right.
can't worry about me, Crosshair. Like this is what I need to do. I have to go. I have to be captured. There's no other way. And Crosshair is the one who's like, but I mean, you can't. No, don't.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Too many.
Crosshair, it's about the greater mission.
Right. To see her, and we talked about Emery's, and this is actually a good parallel. We talked about Emery's kind of development in the last episode.
Mhm.
We really do see Omega's development over the course of the entire series here kind of come to a
Yeah.
head in this scene with Crosshair.
Yeah. Well, it's also a little bit ironic too, because this whole show, how many episodes of The Bad Batch has been like, "Where's Omega? We got to make sure Omega's okay." Like, "Oh no, Omega's captured. We got to help her. How can we find her?" Like the whole show feels driven by the fact that we need to protect Omega, even if we don't know why. Like in the early part of the show, even if we don't know why we need to protect Omega.
Right.
Um, and now we're to the point in the show where Omega's like, "I'm giving myself up." And
Right.
you're like, "Well, what have
Yeah.
we been doing this whole show?" You know?
Right.
But like you said, it's about the character development of her. Like, she's no longer this person that needs to be protected by the Bad Batch. She understands her roles and is, willing to kind of, I guess if she needs to, like, sacrifice herself for what she considers to be the greater good and kind of the greater mission, so to speak, as she words it. So, she goes up to Hemlock. He's captured. Although importantly, there's a quick conversation she and Crosshair have about a tracking device. We see Hemlock instruct the clone commander or the clone trooper to search her for tracking devices. She hands one over, but the way and the just the manner she handed it over, she was like, "Ah, fine,"
Yeah. Right.
like almost like a teenager giving you a burner phone when they have their real phone in their pocket or something like that.
Wow, that's a very specific. I feel like you've done that, Ben. Maybe.
I've experienced that a couple times. Yeah. Um, but I mean, that's what it felt like. She's
Right.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Okay, you can have my tracking device. Here you go."
Yeah. Right.
Like so it feels like Omega has another tracking device is really what I'm
Right.
trying to say. But and when we're talking about tracking devices, you see at the very end of the episode, Crosshair attempts to shoot a tracking device at the operative ship where he's taking Omega off to where we assume would be Tantus after having captured her. And the tracking device just, it kind of arcs
Yeah.
just a little bit short as the ship is taking off. And it was
Hmm.
this moment of dejection from Crosshair and really from us as viewers. We're like, oh, how are they going to find her now?
Hmm.
Because they still don't, as far as we know, they still don't really know how to get to Tantus.
Right.
To the best of my understanding, obviously Crosshair and Omega were there, but Hunter and Wrecker spent all this time trying to find it and couldn't. So that's a little bit of an uncertainty, I would say, in the next episode or two is how are they going to find Omega? Kind
Right.
of where that tracking device may or may not come into play. But there is this moment of meditation from Omega at the very end of the episode, which I honestly thought I was like, is there something like force sensitive
Right.
going to happen or happening here?
Right.
I don't know if you felt that way or not.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it just brought me back to when she learned the meditation practices from Gunji, right? The
Hmm.
Wookiee on Kashyyyk, and she also shared this particular practice with Crosshair. So
Yeah.
it may be very well just a way to kind of center herself and try to understand what she needs to do, and maybe just use it as that mechanism. Maybe
Yeah.
not so much of a force, user type of method, but be able to use what she's learned in order to kind of focus up and what she said. I mean, be a part of this greater mission. So I think I don't think it's a force thing, but we can't say it's not either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that remains a major question. The big thing with the show that I think remains unanswered is, does high M count equal force sensitive? This is the first time that's ever really being called into question, because I think we've always, like I said earlier in the pod, I think we've always just thought those are one and the same.
Hmm.
But maybe you can be high in midichlorians and not be force sensitive, and maybe that's what Omega is, or maybe that's like a clone thing. Maybe clones. I don't know. I'm sure we'll learn a lot more in the next 5 episodes in the next month or so. But
Right.
anyways, 2 great episodes this week. We loved both of them. Pretty special moments from Emery and Omega, respectively, in each of the episodes. And um, if we were rating the episodes, man, I was close to giving episode 10 a 9 out of 10.
Hmm.
Um, I think I'm gonna stick with 8.5, although I could easily go 9 too. Episode 10, I really enjoyed seeing the character development of Emery,
Hmm.
because she's a character we haven't really explored yet, and she's going to obviously be instrumental in the outcome of the end of this season, whatever that may be. Assuming it's somewhat of a positive one for the Bad Batch, it might not be,
Right.
but in some way or another, Emery is going to positively influence the end of the Bad Batch. The show, not necessarily the characters, is what. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
like, yeah.
You're filled with dark ideas this time.
Hopefully, she doesn't influence the end of the actual characters in the Bad Batch, but the end of the plot of the show is more so what I was referring to. But and then for episode 11, I'd probably go just slightly below that. So if I was to elevate it, episode 10 to a 9, I'd probably go with an 8, uh,
Hmm.
just a flat 8 for episode 11, regardless of how I felt about episode 10, whether it's 8.5 or 9. But again, episode 11 did a lot of great stuff. I just felt like it was kind of what we needed to keep
Right.
moving forward. Like, obviously, we know we knew we were going to end up back at Mount Tantus at some point in this season, which meant probably, um, well, I don't want to say probably. I think there was a chance that meant being recaptured, but now we know that that is what that meant, and that it's not just going to be them searching for Tantus, which I think makes more sense in the grand scheme of things. I think there would have been a lot of hesitancy to go back there,
Hmm.
unless they really, really needed to. And now, obviously, there's a reason to really, really, really need to go back there and free Omega. So, anyways, all that to say, episode 11, more action packed than episode 10. I personally preferred the character development of episode 10, which is why I'm going to give episode 11 an 8 flat score for me personally.
Nice. Yeah, for me, same scores. I mean, episode 10 for all the same reasons you said. The the development of Emery was really compelling. It wasn't exactly what I expected going into the episode, because even at the beginning of the episode when we were doing the reaction, we kind of called it out pretty early. I'm like, this isn't going to be a Bad Batch episode. This is going to be, just
Yeah.
completely different of what we're expecting here. So, but still a very compelling episode. I really did like the development again with Emery, and also kind of the brutality of the Empire. We like to shy away from it because we don't like to talk about it, but absolutely that's what that brought to the forefront once again. When it comes to episode 11, there's still, like you said, a lot of good things. I think the obviously the big thing was Omega kind of sacrificing herself and showing her development over the course of the series to kind of give herself up to go back to Tantus. The one thing that I had mentioned during the reaction is just like, we gotta go get Omega again, So there was a little bit of that in me where I'm just like, well, it does make sense in the scheme, but this is, and like you said, this was her choosing her for her to go. and not like, her being kidnapped or anything like that. This was of her own volition. This was her decision, and it makes it a little bit more, I don't know what a better word for this, like adult, where she's just like, I am making this choice. And the reason is because it's more important than the mission is more important than myself, so to see that growth in her, and even how she needed to get them off of Pabu. I think that was like the big thing, where this place where it was pretty serene, very peaceful, and then the Empire just comes in and just blasts everything away. I think that was just too much for her to handle. So to see that growth in her to make that decision, I think it was big. But still, although it was more action packed, it was still kind of a stepping stone to the next thing, in the grand scheme of things. So I gave that a 8.0 as well, just because it was kind of like the next thing that, like you said, the necessary step that needed to be taken in order for them to get back to Tantus, and then we'll see what's going on. So 8.5 for episode 10, and an flat 8 for episode 11.
Nice. Yeah, let us know, those of you listening, either on the socials or in the comments if you're watching the video version. What are your scores for each of the episodes? Did you enjoy episode 10 more than 11 like we did, or did you enjoy episode 11 more? I think there's a lot of merit and worth saying that episode 11, if you liked it more than 10, I think there's that can very well be your thoughts and your feelings, and a very valid opinion to have. So let us know down in the comments or on the socials. We do, again, want to tease the question of the week this week. This will be the community poll here on YouTube, as well as the poll over on X. Will Omega survive Mount Tantus? It's kind of, again, a little bit of a darker question. Sorry, everybody. I'll take the full blame for that one this week. But will Omega survive Mount Tantus? AKA, at the end of Bad Batch Season 3, will Omega still be standing? Or will maybe she'll sacrifice herself for the greater good? Who knows? Who knows? Anything can happen in the final 5 episodes of Season 3 of the Bad Batch, if you can believe it. So in next week's episode, we are going to be discussing everything related to Bad Batch episode 12. Be on the lookout for that. Episode 76 coming next week. You can catch every episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast available on Thursday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern. And yeah, we're looking forward so much to reacting to it next week. And of course, giving our thoughts on the podcast the following day as well. Having said all of that, we want to say thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed over on YouTube. We recently passed 400 subscribers, so thank you to each and every single one of you who made that possible and getting us to that really cool milestone. And here's to the journey towards the next milestone, 500. So appreciate each and every single one of you listening to this, and all those of you who are subbed over on YouTube. Thanks for letting us, helping us get to 400 subscribers. You can find the Hoth Hangout channel, the Hoth Hangout podcast on the YouTube channel, as well as anywhere you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on any of those platforms, leave a 5-star review. We would very much appreciate it. You can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars thoughts or questions or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. The Hoth Hangout podcast is also findable anywhere you get, or excuse me, you can also find the Hoth Hangout socials on TikTok, Instagram, and X at Hoth Hangout on all of those platforms. And as previously mentioned, we do have a relatively new Discord server community. If you're interested in joining that, you can find the link for the Discord down in the show notes of today's episode. And if you can't tell, I'm breezing through these last final parts because we're almost at an hour, I think. Joey, any last thoughts on Bad Batch Season 3, episodes 10 or 11?
This is exactly the road that we need to be on in order to finish this series. And yeah, this has been a wild ride. I can't believe that we came this far with the Bad Batch. Really didn't expect it to be this great. But I'm excited for the next few weeks for the finale.
Me too. Me too. It's almost here. It's sad to say, just about a month left of the Bad Batch. It's been a great ride. Looking forward to the end of it with you and all of you listening as well. So thank you, of course, to Gibbo for producing today's show, video, and assets, and having the highest M count of anyone on Hoth Hangout, undoubtedly. Shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Filoni. Shout out to midichlorians and to all the imprisoned specimens across the Empire. Today's episode is for you. We also appreciate each and every single one of you listening. Thank you again for allowing us to get to this cool milestone of 400 subscribers on the YouTube channel. And we will catch you all in next week's episode, episode 76 of the Hoth Hangout podcast, where we'll be breaking down season 3, episode 12 of The Bad Batch. And until then, once again, thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.